Recording in progress.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And as you can see, our conference room here is a little empty, but we have a few members. But most of us are joining online, so thank you for all of you who are online. I'm Joel Matthew. I'm a research engineer in the AI division, and I have the pleasure to host this talk today. This talk is part of the Good Engineering Seminar series. The focus of this series is to bring up topics that relate both to research and engineering. Good research includes engineering, and good engineering includes research. There is an open call for anybody interested in giving a talk. So if you're interested, please reach out to me like Avijit did. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Avijit Thawani, who is a fourth-year PhD student at USC on the Annenberg Fellowship and is advised by Jay Pujara. He received his bachelor's and master's degrees in computer science from the Indian Institute of Technology in 2014. His research interests lie in natural language processing, numeracy, and tokenization. Outside of research, he's passionate about making tools that improve the lives of researchers. Avijit will present on the topic, how to keep up with new papers, 3 tools to fight FOMO in research. With that introduction, I hand it over to you, Avijit.
Thank you for organizing this series, by the way. I love the last one that you presented on good research practices. But okay, let's get started. So hopefully I'm not the only one here who has like a FOMO in research by just looking at the Twitter threads of all the new papers coming in, and also all the different kinds of archive submissions that keep going on and on. In fact, I studied that there's like 15,000 papers on archive every month, a third of which are like in computer science / machine learning, usually. We have so many reasons to actually have a good literature review now that there's so many papers coming out every day. Reviewers might want to have comparisons to the latest methods. You may also want to seek potential collaborations. You want to fill up your related work section. You probably heard about some work that happened on like that was propagated on Twitter, and now you want to find out if that's relevant to your research. So with all of that going in, there's still this idea of like, why not just like get on with the work that you're doing and only keep the literature review for the last week of your paper submission, when you're just filling out the related work section, find a bunch of papers to cite, and then get on with it. And I know a pretty large bunch of successful researchers who follow the same routine, actually. But I believe that to be a principled good researcher, you should follow, I guess, the Feynman oath, which is, you must not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool. And so if there's a bunch of related work that's out there, how, as a researcher, would you be able to contribute your time such that you're actually filling in the gaps of people's knowledge and the community's knowledge? And for that, literature review is a really crucial part of that. So I'm not really going to be talking about just 3 tools, but more like 3 kinds of tools to fight FOMO in research. And when I look at all the various tools that are out there, I can club them up loosely into 3 categories. One are the summarizers, where you're literally just having this FOMO of like lots of good work coming out, which may or may not be relevant to you, but it's just like blowing up on Twitter or newsletters or stuff like that. And you want a way to distill that down into the most important ones for you. And so those I call the summarizers. The other ones are lookups. So whenever you actually are interested in a specific area, or you have like an anchor point to get started, you just have a paper and you want to find out more about it, you could use lookup services, including Google Scholar and Semantic Scholar and the likes, to get access to more papers and find more relevant papers. And then there's the survey tools. The survey tools are there primarily to help you maintain a survey. You could even share it online with other people, like a survey paper. And that could be a resource to get you more recommendations about the work that's been coming up in that field or on a topic of interest. And that requires automation, that requires some API access and stuff like that. And lastly, I'll show that we've made one such tool in-house with some external help, and it's completely free, completely open source, and I'll show a demo of how you could use that to create your own living survey in under a minute. But before we get started on that, I would just get through like some paid stuff, some really good software that's out there, but this is more than freemium. This is usually all of these features are within the paid plans of these softwares. The first one is Paperpile. I really like the software. I mean, I have not, at least in principle, like the features, right? They have some good note adding capabilities to papers. You could share them, you could keep collections, and you could tag papers, and you could look up papers from all the available sources online. But it's at like $3 a month or something for the academic plan. Then there's Zeta Alpha. Again, I could not go through, like I did not really sign up for this, but it had a good freemium, like a free version, where you still have a lot of summarizer action in that you get summaries of not just papers, but also software. And from, for example, from documentation, from Hugging Face and GitHub repositories and anything that's trending, you'll get all of that as a feed. And then you could also buy a premium subscription to get more access and more sharing tools and paper management tools and stuff. And then going on to summarizers. Most of these are either free or have at least some version within the free plan that you could still find useful. So this is one that Andrea Karpathy recently advocated on Twitter. It's called papers.labml.ai. And this is basically just a collection of the most trending papers based on, as you can see, tweets about it, or comments, or like retweets and stuff. And so it's just getting a sense of which papers are being talked about daily, weekly, monthly, and so on. There's also a way to actually add a custom list. And there's also other things beyond papers. For example, you'll have like videos from Yannick Fletcher. Then there's Alpha Signal. This is a newsletter that I've been subscribing to, and this has helped me a lot with my Twitter FOMO. So instead of like going through my Twitter feed all the time and looking for like the new work that came out on the latest language model that came out, I just let Alpha Signal send me like a weekly newsletter of about the 5 papers that things are the most, again, newsworthy. And so they just have a newsletter service. This is basically, there's no website or platform that you can go on. Then there are lookups. And so these you may already be familiar with. For example, there's Semantic Scholar. There's also Google Scholar, which is pretty similar to Semantic Scholar. I like Semantic Scholar more. And full disclaimer, I have both, but I prefer. Okay, so Semantic Scholar has like a good way to look up papers by titles, author. You could set up your author page, track citations, and also, more importantly, what I like with respect to literature review is that you could have like these folders. So I have like a bunch of folders over here. There's one called Your Papers, which literally just tracks how your papers have been doing and if people have been citing them. And then there's code language models, program generations, numbers, and basically you could have like lists that you could then track. And similarly, you could also select whether you want to receive email notifications about new papers that come on that direction. The thing is that the thing I hate about this, or like this missing, is that you can't really share these papers, and these recommendations are still not open source. So you don't know what's going on in the background. You can't really find it. Then there's connected papers. Similarly, you could go through, there's like a pricing page. So you have like a freemium model. You could create a few drafts, which is like a bunch of papers or related work that you're interested in, but it's only limits you to like 5 drafts a month, and then that exhausts you, and then you go to the paid plan. So it's good to visually see all the papers that are relevant to your list, for example. Then you may have all heard about Zotero and also Mendeley. These are mostly bibliography management software. So you find all the papers that you're interested in and keep them in a place. And so that would be easy to export when you want to write a paper, for example, and to like look it up every time you're going back to it. What's missing in this old school software is that you have to essentially list down every paper that you're interested in. It's not giving you automatic recommendations about what's the new stuff that's coming out, which is maybe still relevant to you. Then there's Artigo papers, which has a good, it has good interface. I think it also allows you to make notes and share notes about papers. And then again, similarly, like drill down into papers that you find interesting, but not really get dynamic recommendations. And then there's Archive Sanity, which was again made by Andrew Kapati a long while ago. It has like it's open source, so you have like you could see like SVM settings, like you could literally fine tune the hyperparameters of like the model that's used to give you recommendations. You tag some papers, and then you add, you get recommendations based on the papers that have been published, but only to archive. So it's been out of maintenance, but good inspiration for what we try to build as well. Then comes survey tools. So these will essentially help you not just maintain a bunch of papers that's relevant to you, but also get recommendations for new ones and share those as like literally surveys with other people. So there's one that was recently pointed out to me called Research Rabbit, and it does pretty good work. For example, it has all of this interface. It's closed source. It's pretty recent, I guess. So we're not sure how this would go ahead in the future with respect to pricing. Right now, I guess it's free. So you could like pull in a bunch of papers, and then you start looking again through a graph view or through by authors and by prior work and following work, and then you get more recommendations. You could even sign up for like email alerts and stuff. And finally, this is the work that I'm going to show a demo about just after the slide. We have made this tool. This is all posted on GitHub. And this is essentially going to give you like a free website that you can then share with any people that you want. And it would have new candidate papers that it would recommend you to add to your papers list, which is, I'll show what all of this means in a minute. We're using this based on just all of the code and data lives on your, your repository. And it's using Netlify, free tier service, and GitHub Actions, and Semantic Scholar to automate all of the new recommendation stuff. So it's entirely free. Well, okay. I mean, I could move on to demo unless there's like, and meanwhile, while I set it up, the many people that are on the call could ask a question.
I actually had a question.
Sure.
It's regarding summarization of papers. So are there any free tools or services available that allow you to summarize papers? Maybe just archive papers or?
Oh, I see. Do you mean like a TLDR?
Yes.
I see. So Semantic Scholar has like a feature inbuilt which gives you like a TLDR. They have like researchers build this tool which gives you like a one-line TLDR. But still not really. I mean, you already have the abstract, so the TLDR is maybe not that helpful. I usually like to go to Semantic Scholar, go through the figures and the TLDR and the abstract to understand what this paper is doing, and then go to the paper view. It would totally seem like I'm plugging them at this point, but Semantic Scholar also has like a good reader. So you have like a reader interface as opposed to opening a PDF. You open it seemingly like a PDF, but then you could also if you see a citation, for example, you could just like click on the citation and open up as a pop-up box, as opposed to like take you all the way down to your, look at your references. Yeah. And there's a bunch of recent work, by the way, that's been going on using things like GPT-3 to answer questions about papers. I think I just saw a tweet like last night about something similar. I'll probably have to find something.
Thanks.
If there's any other questions? Okay, so this is the open source repository that I was mentioning. It's called, I would drop a link to this in the Zoom channel as well. What's happening here is that you have all of these, it's a GitHub template. So the way to go about this is that you create a new template whenever you want to create a new survey. So for example, I want to create a survey on numbers in text and how you represent numbers in text. Okay, so you literally just create a repository, and another thing that you'd want to do is to go to GitHub. Right. So within actions, you give it read and write permissions. And so what this would do is to allow the code that's running in this repository to update and get you more recommendations automatically. All of this data is going to live on your GitHub repository. That's literally it. And so as you can see, the first thing that you'd want to do is, after giving permissions, you just need to add a bunch of papers to this file that says papers to add.txt. So I'm going to go down here. There's a bunch of paper links, literally. I'm going to copy them. As an example, you could have your own links. The best links that work right now are Archive, Semantic Scholar, and ACL Anthology. And if you fail to add any other kinds of links, then I would be happy to help with that as well. So all we're going to do is commit this. And what happens now is that there is going to be an action that says update papers to add. What's happening in the background is it's looking at each of those links, going to Semantic Scholar or some other service and getting those details about them, and then creating a file which would literally just have like the current papers. And so this is still running. And while it's still running, what I could show is I could go to Netlify, I'm already logged in, and create a new website. So maybe people have already done this for other work, but this is a really good service to create like a free website that's linked to your GitHub repository. So you're just going to select GitHub. I've already authorized, but you could do that and log in. And then we're going to look for the one that the repository that we just had. So numbers, I guess, numbers and text. Okay. Right. The only thing that you need to make sure is that you just mention base directory website, and that's it. Your free tier website is deployed. You could make some changes. For example, you could say numbers and text, and so you'll get like a fancy URL. And essentially, you already have that. So here's the website that's just been created. Right now, the My Papers is empty because the GitHub Actions is still running. But let's see, maybe come up pretty soon. You can see the log, what's happening over here. We added like a bunch of papers, maybe 10 to 15 papers, and it's just fetching all of those details. In the meanwhile, I could also show you the other living surveys that I've already created. So there's one on tokenization, and as you can see, this is like the similar website view that you're getting. You have a My Papers tab, a Candidate Papers tab, and the candidate papers are essentially the latest papers that came out, which are also relevant to the papers. And so there's a very specific formula that goes on about it. You could like sort by publication date. There's papers that just came out in February, and maybe I'm interested in adding them. I'll just click on the papers that I'm interested in adding, and then go to the repository, the GitHub repository, papers to add.txt, and just paste it and be done with it. And there's also a functionality of importing from bib file. So in other cases, for example, in this augmented language models, I just read a paper that was released last week on Archive, which has a huge bibliography. So what I did was I just copied all of those, that bib file, and uploaded it to this repository, and you could see the instructions for that on the GitHub repository, the template. And again, what you're seeing is you have these are the imported papers. Then you could go to candidate papers that are the latest papers that came out. This is actually the survey, and then other papers that you've already added to the survey. So the point of all of this is that, okay, that's probably, oh, I see. There was a fast forward happening because, but you could literally just go to actions or code, papers to add.txt. Just gonna maybe just commit again, and that would be it. And we run it again, and this would run already. This is already the candidate finding task is already running every day. So you give you new recommendations if any new papers come. Yeah, I could stop you, Dave. Like more questions.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
What is the algorithm for finding
candidate
papers?
Yes, awesome. So the algorithm is pretty simple. We're basically saying you have a bunch of papers in your papers to add.txt, right? These are papers that you're interested in, right? So imagine if you were writing this paper today, okay? Would you be citing all of these papers? Okay. And if so, what are the papers that are already out there, most of which have already cited these papers? So, for example, if there's a paper that cites maybe 7 out of these 25 papers, then that's a good paper that may be relevant to you. And that's literally the formula that we're using right now. And if you want a different kind of formula, you want to look for like different hyperparameter settings, how many papers do you want to fetch from Semantic Scholar and stuff? We could help you do that because all of that is on the repository itself. There's like scripts. You could say add candidate papers to JavaScript. You could literally change the logic that goes on over here. Yeah.
And the source for all of this is from Semantic Scholar.
Yes, it's all from Semantic Scholar. They have, so we fetch from Semantic Scholar. We can also import a bib file. There's a way to, you go to data, and there's upload.bib. So if you just edit this file and paste a bib file over here, it'll look for those names on Semantic Scholar and get you those papers, most of which it is able to find. So I believe I have added this again. Sorry, good.
Sorry, you can go first.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sorry, there's some sort of echo through the
echo
in the conference room, but
you have your sound?
okay, yeah, my question is how easy is this to like self-host, and like if I wanted to run this on my own computer without GitHub Actions or Netlify or anything, how easy would that be?
Sure. I mean, so all we're using is Semantic Scholar API, which is like a free API that you can use. And then we're using GitHub Actions to just not have to host it on our own servers, but you could do that, and similarly Netlify. So this is just like, if you want the website, you could just host it on on your own server and run it as a node package or something. And similarly, so Semantic Scholar API has a way to be accessed from JavaScript, and all you do is just use those scripts, get some data from CSV or something, anything that you want, and host it on your own server. And you could like change the website. You don't have to go with the template of the website that we are proposing. You could just use that. In fact, even right now, even with the GitHub Actions, what you're having is all of the data, as I said, lives on your repository. So you go to currentpapers.csv, maybe not in this one, but because this is still loading. If you go to tokenization or maybe augmented language models, repo. So this is the repository, and then all the data just lives here. You could find the CSV. You could literally just copy paste the CSV. Sometimes what I do is just copy paste the CSV into a Google Sheet and then add more notes around it. And you could also find the candidate papers, I guess, in JSON file, CSV format, and all of that. So the thing is, and if you have like a more custom requirement, I'd be happy to help with that as well.
Understood. Thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, actually, could you put a link to the repository in the chat?
I should do that totally.
Thank you.
Instead of just clarification questions, if you have any more ideas on what we could do with this, any specific requirements that you're thinking, oh, this would be cool if only it had this feature, then I would be all ears.
Actually, I was wondering, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Avijit, you went through a lot of different tools. They're all very interesting. I'm curious, which ones do you use on a regular basis?
Sure. As I said, I use Alpha Signal for summarization. I just like have this newsletter that gives me like top 5 or top 3 papers that goes in. I use Semantic Scholar for lookup. I'm not really into like the whole graph view of papers. This ticks me off, but on the other hand, Semantic Scholar is pretty good to fetch papers, be TLDRs, as I was just describing. That's for like the lookup things. And then I have been doing this like from the day I started my PhD. Literally, I've been trying so many different things. I set up like a Notion table, and I have like over 300 papers there with like tags and all of those. But then it was still so hard to manage because it was not like plugged in with some API or anything like that. And so eventually I had to go ahead and build this tool with Eshan. A huge shout out to him who's been doing all the development on this repository. So that has finally helped me on a daily basis. All these surveys that I showed you, like every time that I talk to another person and like, oh, I mean, this is like a whole new field, but I want to find out what is all the relevant work that's been going on here. I quickly just like put a bunch of papers, add them to papers.add.txt, go to other work, and then come back and I have like hundreds of recommendations. And then I add some more of those papers that I feel more relevant to me, and then I add them, and then I get more recommendations which are more fine-tuned. And soon I have like this repository. In fact, I just started out another Java project a month ago, I guess. And again, I was like struggling to figure out what are the different pieces of literature that are relevant to me already out there. So I just used, again, this repository again, and that helped me a lot.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if the website can also do something like, it's sometimes useful if you want to present the papers that you've gone through to someone. So instead of it just being in plain text format, it could be, some sort of PDF or slide format so that you could explain it, and maybe kind of bringing back the summarization idea. It kind of adds the summary there so you can quickly go over the papers that you've looked at with someone else who you're collaborating with. Just a suggestion that I thought would be useful.
That's really interesting. In fact, I guess in least believe that there's like a TLDR that we already pull in. I'm not pretty sure about this. Oh yes, so it says summary over here. Yes. And that's the other way. So here's a summary already that's being pulled from Semantic Scholar using like the set something thing that I mentioned.
Cool.
This is much shorter than the abstract. And that's being used in terms of more media. Yeah, we could chat more about like how we could incorporate that. But yeah, that's a good point, because you always would want to share it with your advisor, and you would want to make slides for it, or maybe you could have
Some graphical representation.
good idea.
So Avijit, one more question. So what's the name of the software that you're actually showing on the screen? The one where you load in the papers and it comes up with the papers?
We have a pretty bad name. It's just called Research Literature Manager at this point.
Oh, I
It's
see.
just a GitHub repository. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to call it Living Service because that's what it's helping me do.
Great. Thanks.
Sure. Sorry. Okay, there's a question in chat that I'm reading out. It says, it sounds like TLDR is a separate thing from what we call summarizers. What does the summarizer do? What does example alpha sigma do? Okay, I could just go to signal. So if you sign up for an alpha signal newsletter, that's what you would get. You'd get this in your email every week. And it will just tell you like top publications, a bunch of these papers, and the relevant maybe discussions on Twitter or Reddit or something like that. So it suggests that these are the most talked about papers on Twitter and other places this week. It'll probably have some ads in there at some point, and some also similarly for repositories. Similarly, the labml.ai is also doing something very similar. So you have like a weekly tab, and you're getting a bunch of papers that are in there. So the augmented language models survey, this has been doing rounds on Twitter. That's and so you can see how that's coming up. Similarly, theory of mind, this was also the one. You're getting all of these based on again Twitter and other discussions. You could also find lists. So there's like videos by 2-minute papers with summarized papers on YouTube, and there's like literature and stuff. Hope that answers your question, Joe.
Is there a licensing on the code that you put?
Oh, on my code, I hope it's. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I mean, I need to add that.
You have it listed. You have it listed as ISC in your package.json.
Oh, I see. I'll go through that and make sure that it is fairly, fair use. You could reuse it.
Yeah.
I won't sue you, I promise. Okay, yeah, I mean, good on the questions, I guess. We could end early.
Yeah, if nobody else has any other questions, I'd like to give everybody else some extra time for the day.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and thank you so much, Avijit, for the very enlightening talk and the cool tool that you demoed. I think I'll be using it going forward. So thank you again. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.